Proof has come out in the House of Commons today that Kier Starmer has deliberately lied to the British public in order to let foreign criminals out of prison. Now, we know that he spent his entire career attempting to have uncontrolled immigration, attempting to melt our borders away, attempting to change our society and change our country through rapid and uncontrolled change in our demographics. But we've never known until today the extent to which he is willing to go to. 40,000 prisoners were let out of prison early, many of them foreign criminals who were not deported. And we've now got definitive proof that he didn't need to release those people. Hello everyone, this is Andre Walker. Thanks so much for watching this video. Please do subscribe, but more importantly, hit the bell notification icon. It's the best way to absolutely guarantee you get all my videos as soon as they are released. Well, some of these videos that I make are quite difficult to think how to start, simply because I just make them up off the top of my head based on what I read in a briefing beforehand. But what you've got to remember is, first and foremost, we've had all this issue with grooming gangs, haven't we? Where there's been really very little action against them. And we've seen cases where people involved in grooming gangs have received smaller sentences than those people who've complained about the Bell Hotel in Epping. Similarly, we've seen all of these releases from prison recently, which have been, you know, foreign offenders being let out, SA and all this sort of thing, R gangs, grooming gangs, all these sorts of people. And that is something that is incredibly bad. Then, of course, we got news earlier this week, I think it was, that there was pressure on the Home Office to allow people to have asylum in the United Kingdom granted if they have had a prison sentence that's less than 12 months. So foreign criminals are literally going to be allowed in. We also had the details, and I'm sorry to get listy, but we've also got the details whereby they're now saying that people suffering from mental health problems should have a right to remain in the United Kingdom. And so we're saying we're not going to stop foreign criminals. We are going to allow mentally ill patients from abroad. And of course, the other thing that I talked about on this channel is the way that people who say that they're modern day slaves will be allowed to stay in the country. Okay, so we've got all of that, which I just think is pretty lamentable and shameful to start with. But now we've got this information from the House of Commons. It's come from the Conservatives, who, you know, occasionally get their act into gear. By the way, I was always a strong Conservative. I felt the Conservative Party left us rather than us leaving the Conservative Party, but that is for another day. Here we go. So, 3 prisons are nearly half full, whereas 6 have a quarter of their capacity free. So that means 3 prisons that half of the space is available for prisoners, and there are further 6 prisons where 25% is available. Now, it gives some examples, and it says that the Shadow Justice Minister, Kieran Mullen, has said this is an insult to the victims and puts the public at increased risk. Labour needs to get a grip. Now, the Department for Justice haven't denied these specific figures, but they've said that overall we are 80% at capacity. Well, can I tell you, the NHS tries to operate at 100% capacity. The reason it runs out of beds very regularly is not because it's crap, which it is, it's because they don't keep loads of wards free. Can you imagine if the NHS said, oh, we keep 6 hospitals spare just in case? Well, you'd go mad. They cost absolutely millions and millions to run and sometimes billions to build. So 80% capacity, what that says to me is where the dishonesty is, because they've still got these spaces free, but I bet you there's overcrowding elsewhere and they've got the space. Well, I know this sounds awful, but given that these people are in prison to be punished, if overcrowding works, then allow it to be overcrowded. I remember at university, which, believe me, some of the halls of residence were not dissimilar to prisons. What they did was they said to people, right, you can pay your full fee, your full cost of accommodation, or we'll discount it by 75% if you turn your room into a double room where you put bunk beds in, as an example. And they managed to get a lot more students in accommodation as a result of that. You can do, I mean, I appreciate a university is not meant to be like a prison, but the principle's fairly similar, isn't it? That you've got long rows of small bedrooms in in one building together with behind a security fence and a defined geographic location, right? That is the same principle. But what is it now that we're seeing? Well, I believe what we're seeing is a deliberate strategy. You know, when you see that Hadish Kabatu being released from Chelmsford prison, I think that a lot of it is now about deliberately being egregious to the British public and getting away with it, to soften us up. Because now what we have to do is we have to accept the reality. Grooming gangs are a reality. Foreign ex-offenders are a reality. We are going to continue to allow people in. When you saw Hadish Kabatu go back to, is it Eritrea that he went to? Forgive me if that's the wrong country. But when he was back in his country of origin, he wasn't that bothered, because in that country, groping a 14-year-old girl is entirely acceptable. Somebody said to me that in Egypt, 95% of women, by the time they get to retirement age, say they've been groped in some way, shape or form. That's, in these countries, that's the way you, I mean, I'm not saying this to be facetious. Sorry, I'm not saying this to take the mick, I'm saying it to be facetious. That's the way you express your love for a woman, grabbing a bum in the middle of the street. And that seems to be the cultural norm in those countries. And when we talk about cultural enrichment, of course, we are being culturally enriched with grooming gangs, aren't we? That is the way that things are going to be from now on. But I no longer trust the justice system, and I no longer trust the court system. And I agreed with Robert Jenrick when he got the judge's wig out. You can call him Alan Partridge all day for doing it. But the point he made was this, that now the number of judges who are in reality little more than activists attempting to push their views forward, because they are in favour of uncontrolled immigration. You know, that is now a major problem in this country. When you see all of these people who are attempting to lie their way into Britain, and the way that if any case of any description has any merit whatsoever, they're allowed to stay. That guy, the one in, one out guy who came back, you know, there was a court case in which his lawyers attempted to say that because he was so traumatised by being thrown out of the country, that in of itself should be leave to remain in the UK. The number of people that we deport is absolutely tiny. But now, let's just get back to the details of this case. We are bringing in foreign sex offenders, right? And we are releasing them from prison early because of perceived overcrowding that isn't true. What that means is that you have the legal system conspiring to undermine democracy and allow uncontrolled immigration. Then you have activist judges who are deliberately approving any case if it has virtually no merit whatsoever. Then you have criminal judges being told by the Sentencing Council and the Law Society that they should give less stringent punishments to people who are foreign or ethnic minorities, and then they get priority for being released into the community. What is this? Well, I would say that it's not a genocide, but it's a weapon of war, right? What you do is, if you want to destroy and break the spirit of a group of people, you take their children from them and you are their daughters. And then if you want to ensure that that community is completely destroyed, you ensure that the police lock them up for complaining. You castigate their political leaders, you ban their history, you pull down their statues, you criminalise their political campaigns, and you ensure that the people that subject them to this abuse are allowed to roam the streets with the protection of the state. That is a genocide of sorts. It is the way that you start the message that Britain is a hostile environment for white Christian people. That is what that message is. Now, whether that message is deliberate or whether that message is accidental really makes very little difference. It nonetheless means that those people are going to now feel trapped, they're going to feel attacked, and they're going to now start to look for their new homeland. And I think that now we have to start considering the very real possibility that if our political leaders are going to give our country to a new group of people, then the question is, where would we move to? I have to say, Poland looks absolutely fantastic, now becoming one of the richest countries in Europe. But I think for many British people, Eastern Europe will be the future. I'm sorry to say that because it's a sad situation to be in, but the reality is you can't be in a situation where your criminal justice system is deliberately letting people out in order to harass and abuse your children, and also they're attempting to criminalise your political leadership. Congratulations, by the way, to Tommy Robinson. I've always said that I'm not a supporter of Tommy Robinson. People go, oh, how can you say that? He has his organisation, I have mine. That's why I'm not a supporter of his. But it has to be said that the attacks that the criminal justice system and the police are running on him, I think, is evidence that they are trying to subjugate you. Until next time, arrivederci and goodbye.